two to web three.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let Fintech Grow. I'm Ian Horn, and today we're going to get back into the topic of artificial intelligence, while also keeping a focused eye on fintech growth. So for this conversation, I'm joined by Daniel Callis, founder and CEO of Beyla AI. Now, I first met Daniel earlier this year while Beyla was being presented as part of the FCA Smart Data Accelerator, and I was fascinated by what he's building, which is essentially a digital C-suite. That's right, he's building AI-powered digital humans that can carry out the functions of senior roles. Now, I have many questions, but firstly, though, Daniel, welcome to LFG. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ian. Thanks for having me. And this is me. It's not a replica. I am here in person with you, so very happy to be here.
I was going to say, this is not the virtual CMO, not the virtual press officer. I'm glad. This is the real. I've met you in real life. I feel like I would like to think I would spot if I was being duped.
It'd be more made up if it was the virtual one. More hair and a bit more muscular, maybe.
Yeah, I think I would do the same, to be honest with you. Look, let's get into Beyla and what you're doing. And actually, I think it's best coming from you because it's a really cool thing. And I know you've pivoted once or twice as well. We'll get into that later. But for those that aren't familiar with what you do, what is Beyla and what inspired you to create it?
Yeah, no, thank you. So Beyla is, and maybe if I start off with the genesis of Beyla,
Go for it. Yeah.
A bit of context. So in folklore or mythology, Beyla was the goddess of agriculture, fertility, and pollination, and so the goddess of bees and the hive. And what we set out to build was a digital hive of collective intelligence. So rather than collecting sort of from nature pollen and growing that, we wanted to collect data that was relevant for the world we live in today. So Beyla is a digital hive of that intelligence. And what we're using that for is for business and finance, effectively. It is the area we believe remains ripe for transformation. And actually, Beyla is setting out to try and build a new category that is not only a business platform, is not only a finance platform, but merges the two into a proactive technology that works for you, the customer.
Great stuff. So you're basically gathering all the context across the business to be able to make informed, I was going to say decisions, but suggestions, right? Is that the idea that
Beyla set out, and this will, as technology improves and as the data improves, if we're more confident about the data, then Beyla will be able to act, and it's been built to act for you, but based to act under your guidance, under your approval, under your authority. So Beyla has an autonomous element to it, but it works for you, the business. So we're setting out Beyla is a B2B platform. So we're not looking at consumers at this stage. So this is small businesses primarily, the people that have a huge opportunity, have huge aspirations, but don't necessarily have access to the resources of a Fortune 500 or a FTSE 100 company, where you have that internal talent, third parties coming in speaking to you. Because the reality, if you're a small business, you don't have the time, you don't have the connections, and often you don't have the budget to pay for that.
Yeah, and I can imagine it helps you keep organized as well, like staying on top of everything, prioritizing your work, and taking a lot of that legwork out that the business owners just don't have time to do or need to find time to do somehow.
Yeah, and focus on the things that add value to you. So typically it's your customers, it's growing your business, and part of the challenge with technology is around, certainly over the last few decades, it's been presented in a way that you drive it yourself. So I have to log on to the system. I have to work out what that is. I have to figure that out. And if I need somebody to do it for me, I have to pay for their time, either full-time or fractional. And then I have to tell them what to do. So the challenge with technology systems is, yes, you're giving me information that I can utilize at my fingertips, but that only works if I know how to use them. And the reality is, unless you're an accountant, things like Xero, QuickBooks, Sage are quite complex. Unless you're a banker, things like the banking systems and treasury systems look quite complex. So it's around how do you, if you're starting out or you've been in business for a number of years, but you have an idea, you want to grow your business, you have to have all those caps on, and that is a hard thing to manage for many businesses. So you do the bare minimum. We want Beyla to change that. We want Beyla to be there as your ally and your advocate, seeing how we can support you with those tools that if you were in a Fortune 500 company, people would be queuing up to give you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely fascinating, and the interface is something that intrigues me. I mean, when I saw your demo of it, you had, it was digital humans in a very literal sense. You could see like an avatar speaking to you that looked very very real. So I'm intrigued by this because there's lots of different ways you can automate. Right, one would be to create a series of spreadsheets, or it would be to create something very much kind of decision box led, like a chat bot or something like that. You've gone the whole way and decided to kind of emulate humans, which I think is cool. But why did you choose to do that? I mean, is there some research that backs that up, or just a gut feel?
And it's how have we evolved? So I
Yeah,
mean, but we as in the human race has evolved around working with other humans, and we've become successful because we collaborate, we build teams, tribes, businesses, cultures, and that's with other humans. We never evolved to type into a small box or press buttons. I want this action, and I sort of type it in with text. And it's interesting in terms of as we all message each other on a daily basis, is quite likely WhatsApp,
yeah,
SMS has probably got away, but messaging happens all the time. Often when you find actually something's been miscommunicated, because I've sent you a message, you've not understood what my context was, you received that and you've acted on it,
yeah.
because you're limited to those parameters. We wanted to build something new. And actually, if I thought about, okay, what would I do if I had literally a clean blue sky, clean piece of paper? It was around, okay, well, how can I take the digital experience or the human experience, but digitalize it through where I believe that the sort of the focus of AI will get us to? And that for me was digital humans. So how can we have something you can work with like a team member? So if I was to hire in a member of my team, they'd come in, sit either in my office or in my sort of working environment, and I would speak to them. I would have a Teams call with them. I'd have a face-to-face meeting with them. We would say a lot more than the one instruction I wanted them to undertake. And through that context, they're learning. They're providing me feedback, and it's around sort of how we in our brains work in a way to really understand complex tasks. So
Yeah.
for me, digital humans, talking is great. So having a voice, but actually having the other sense of if Beyla's talking at you, and if I'm the customer and Beyla's talking at me, and I've got a look on my face where I don't know what they're talking about, that's body language. It actually gives useful information.
Actually, that's what I was going to ask about, and I'd wonder if that was a step too far and a bit too science fiction, that you can have a bot that recognizes your tone of voice, your body language, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, as you say, it's picking up that context, right?
Yeah, and it's not easy. I'll be honest with that. And we're not quite there today. It's
Yeah.
not perfect in the sense of it's a real person. Yeah,
Mm.
we're not. But and we're building this for the next 10 years. We're not building this for today and tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm guessing.
And things will
Yeah.
iterate. But for what
Yeah.
we want to build and what we're trying to build is around. It feels positive. It feels like actually this is a team that's got my back and is there to actually help me. And that's really the key thing we're looking to drive out. Something that is not working for us and trying to sell to you, but
Mhm.
actually we give it to you as part of an ecosystem where you grow, you thrive, and through that we grow and we thrive as a community. And that to me is all about the way humans work in the best way together.
Yeah, I mean, I will get more into regulation and compliance later, but could you give me an example of a guardrail that you've had to build in? Because I was getting excited there about being able to read body language and tone of voice and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really, really cool that we're moving towards that. But I'm guessing that's throwing up a few false positives, perhaps, that you've had to
Yeah,
watch
yeah.
against.
I mean, certainly, and this is an iterating process. So, as I mentioned, we want Beta to be a positive. It's not there to tell you everything's right and perfect, and it's not there to be that sort of. And it's interesting, AI, and if you're utilizing AI platforms, they'll have a different persona. So for us, having and building out that persona is important, and it's got to be Beta's persona, so our corporate brand, if you like.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working on continually. In terms of what does that mean, obviously data is key, consent is key, the ability to look at where you are, because the reality is today Beta primarily is used over a PC or a laptop. in the future, Beyla will be on a mobile. So if you're sitting on a train, Beyla needs to recognize that and not tell you all of your financial details out loud in the carriage, in the same way that potentially you would if you were sitting there as a person. So we're looking to build in those rails to actually help protect. Some customers will say, actually, I want that information. I've got my headphones in. Give me the info. It's around, we're not there to police a user's preference. We're there to give options to create a framework that the business can set their own rules and structures in the way it actually works for them. And that's key for us. We want to move into the regulated space, and very much from day one. If as you roll back, we actually start out to build not a business system. We actually started out to build the first AI native neobank. That was phase one of Beyla. The challenge with building a challenger bank is hard and complex. So we've pivoted slightly. That is still very much on the roadmap. We've been working with the regulators. We want to be in a position where we have that regulatory oversight, and we're working as if we are a financial services business with all the requirements of consumer duty and everything else that goes around with that. Phase one of Beyla actually is a non-regulated agent platform, effectively. But we're building it to the two link together seamlessly. And that's important for us because, again, as I mentioned, we want this to be a net positive for our customers in the way that we can help them to grow and support their aspirations. And by being able to control the movement of money, that gives Beyla an advantage in terms of adding that layer of support.
Yeah, I want to get into that aspect because, again, we've talked about the kind of C-suite decision making, but this is the first we've really gone into the fintech angle of it. I mean, before that, there's another a quote I think you've made on your website, or a data point that you highlighted, which is that 82% of SME failures can be attributed to cash flow problems rather than profitability. And that's a fascinating stat. Your view is that Beyla could reduce this number, perhaps even significantly. So could you walk me through this problem exactly, and also why a digital C-suite might prevent that from happening?
Yeah, so mainly it's around timing and the ability to forecast. As well as, so that's one aspect. It's not a simple output, but unfortunately, this is the sort of statistics coming back from people like the Federation of Small Business and various other sort of institutions have been looking at this and how they can put tools in to improve. If you think about running a business, one of the challenges, the smaller you are, the more terms are dictated to you. So if you're working with an enterprise customer, often they may say, well, yes, we're going to pay you in, but we're going to pay you on 60 or 90-day terms. Yeah, that creates a cash flow gap for you. You've got to fund often that work in advance of getting paid. It's around, okay, well, I'm expecting money to come in from another small business and maybe they haven't paid me. And how do I manage that? So often, because for many companies where they are running finance internally or they have a small team, they are not able to get on top of following up with their vendors and suppliers. Are you due to make the payment? If you're not, please tell us so we can balance things out. Understanding actually, well, if we want to bring on a new person, what is that cost going to impact the business? Yeah, it's not only the salary, it's the national insurance, it's the pension, it's the everything else. How do I focus that into my runway, and how do I ensure that runway is consistent, and how do I ensure my sales are keeping pace with my forecast? That all happens, and the problem is for many people, it's happening in their heads. You sit down to look at it and it's, oh, this is next week. I can't make payroll. I can't do this. I can't pay that supplier. They're not going to give me the inventory, and things break down. And that's a really unfortunate position for many companies to be in. What Beyla does is it works 24/7 to try and remove some of those issues, surface those things earlier. So if in the future Beyla's worked with that small business and it's saying to you, Ian, we've looked at actually some of these receivables due, the risk factor of receiving those is quite high. Should we actually look to reach out proactively and have a conversation to ensure they are coming in? Should we look at potentially getting some short-term finance to cover that gap? And what type of finance should we get? And that's where we've been working. One of the programs with the FCA was around the Smart Data Accelerator, was around looking at what does open finance as a new paradigm give us. An open finance is effectively the umbrella above open banking, where it opens up APIs to finance companies, to lenders, to pension companies, insurance companies. So what that enables in the future is that if we find there's an opportunity, Ian's small business requires funding, Beyla can actually go out to funders that we know have appetite, can provide information and bring back quotes directly to Ian, the small business, in a practical manner. Whether you wish to choose to accept those is down to the business, and we can then help facilitate that. But it's trying to surface information in a way that actually really helps you drive direct action, rather than saying, I've done a search on the internet and these are some lenders, go and speak to them.
Yeah, that is very cool. I like the idea that it's not just providing you that visualization and the interface that I think makes things a million times easier, but then also proactively doing things to drive a business forward. That is a future which, if achievable, and I get the impression that it is in time, is very good. In the meantime, Daniel, I'll just have to point out that if anyone wants to sponsor this podcast, they're welcome to. In time, we'll do the AI outreach. We'll get there, but it's a very cool future that we're looking at here. I mean,
I think so. Now is a time to think about, rather than let's iterate and change that 10% that we've had and improve. AI gives us, part of the challenge of AI, it gives us this huge opportunity of where can we go, and it looks like we can do lots of things, and this will be a journey in reality. It looks like open finance will be approved by 2028 now, so things can happen before that, but that would be under sort of more partnership agreements with different lenders in a similar way to what you see around insurance today. There's firms out there that can provide a let's call it a concierge service for insurance. We can do similar things, but that's harder, and that takes more time. It takes more effort. If you have something like the regulatory framework to say all financial services company need to have open APIs which are consistent and allow information to move freely in a positive way for our consumers, then companies come into that space and build products which serves the consumers.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to the pivot that you've gone through, because it seems like you had an initial idea, you then, rode back a little bit into what you can actually do and make a viable business of, but then long term, it looks like you still have a view on that original idea. Could you explain to anyone who's not aware why you would need to have like a banking license for this, and what that would allow you to do? I feel like you've touched upon it already, but I'd really like to make it clear.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the challenges, and the reason we set out to build the first AI native neobank is very much around not taking the banking technology stack which is available, and there's a number of providers that provide full service banking stacks, to companies that we could have branded up as Beyla and said we're now a new challenger in this space. Those technologies were built very pre-AI. Ultimately, typically they're 10 to 15 years old. They've been built around APIs, microservices, and very human-centered organizational structures. So what we didn't want to do was try and take what was out there today and try to push AI into it, which is like everyone else is doing, because the challenge is the AI comes into it and says, all this information's in lots of different places, I can't understand it. It actually doesn't like software. It doesn't really have a voice, but in a sense of getting the data from 1,000 different microservices and providing outputs on that, it is really difficult. So we knew that actually, I don't want to take a banking system and put AI into it. Why don't we build an AI system and put banking into it? Because we can then control that architecture, that framework, and say, okay, if we have this aspiration, we want to build these products. We know what the knowledge intelligence layer is. How do we now connect in the right industry capabilities to it?
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that kind of that logic pathway, because if you'd suggested that 10 years ago, I would have thought you were a mad scientist or something.
Increasingly, some people I speak to today still think I'm a mad scientist. And that's the fun of it. I think we're proving that it is working. You asked why we pivoted slightly. One of the challenges is investment, and actually I can monetize the agent services as a technology company far faster than I can as a regulated payments business. The reality of building a regulated payments business is you have to build the platform, you have to get the approvals, you can then launch. That takes time, capital, and talent to do so. We can create a technology company and iterate that in a sort of a consistent framework, working with our customers who understand we're growing with them, and do that in parallel.
Yeah. And to go back to your point around building the AI and then adding the banking in rather than vice versa, is this why you've chosen to try and get your own banking license rather than work with an
Yeah.
existing bank, which would strike me as the easiest thing to do? Not that any of this is easy.
No, so you would think that, so I worked in banking for 25 years. That's 16 years HSBC. I was Bank of America, and I started out my career at Chase Manhattan, and now JP Morgan, primarily in operations, servicing, customer engagement, and I used to run parts of their cash management business. So I know they at a deep level how those platforms work. And the challenge with trying to build AI into that or partnering with those institutions, fantastic institutions, great leaders, lots of technology, but not built to surface information in the way that agents really require, and
Yeah.
certainly not on an external basis. So one of the challenges with Beyla connecting to a bank is that as soon as you go in via a gateway, those agents get blocked out for everything. Because rightly so, the bank's guardrails, the bank's security protocols aren't going to let a third-party agent come in and sniff around. I know Anthropic are trying to get in there and do some other things, and that's
Yeah.
an interesting opportunity, but they're in a very different state to where we are.
Yeah.
And the reality is they are locked down in many different ways. So for us, I can connect to banks, and we will use open banking to get balance information to be able to send payment requests to a connected bank using open banking. But if I try and go deeper into that, all of the information that the bank has that they don't surface to the company via the API, I can't see. So
Yeah.
by building the bank and by building the information and getting access to the information that actually, let's call HSBC just because of my previous employer, has, but can't actually see themselves in making decisions, gives us an advantage over fraud. It gives us under risk. It gives us an advantage over servicing customers with the right product that fits their needs. If I
Yeah.
go to a different organization, that information is available within the organization, but not in the way the organization can consume it, check it, use it, and refine it.
Yeah, absolutely. And stick with the regulation theme a little bit. My understanding is that you're still on the pathway to becoming an electronic money institution, right? How is that journey? I mean, is that also strikes me as quite a complicated thing to do? But how are you navigating that while trying to grow your business and get investment in it and all the rest?
Yeah, so we've paused the pushing forward on it. So we know
Mhm.
that is the pathway we wish to take. So we wanted to spend time with the FCA in advance of actually building anything,
Yeah.
because they are the UK regulator we knew we wanted to be associated with. It was good timing in a sense they were launching the first AI Supercharged Sandbox, and
Hmm.
Beta was accepted into cohort one of the Supercharged Sandbox. And that for us was really important because we could then start to work with the regulator around the ideas we had, the concepts we had, test actually if we want to do this type of area, what do you think about it? And they've been really open, and actually working with them in terms of actually what they don't have the answers. They know they don't have the answers. We don't have a definitive pattern, and we work around sort of what we think is right. And for us, it comes back to and the ethos has been how do we serve the customer in the best way. And for us, the FCA had that. They've moved over the last few years to an outcomes-based organization that fits really well with our aspirations. We're not trying to do anything which is seen as breaking the boundaries, pushing the boundaries to actually support ourselves. It's around how can we help our customers to grow, and if our customers grow, then we, off the back of that, support and grow with them.
Yeah, and I would back that up because that's where we first got talking was
Yeah,
at that first cohort, and yeah, I really like the approach the FCA is taking with this. It seems very forward thinking and trying to assist rather than trying to stop, which I
yeah.
think is ideal. Really, I think other regulators should probably follow suit on that if they aren't already. But to look at what is tricky though, because obviously they do have to push back on things, right? That is their job. What was it that the FCA pushed back on hardest about your proposition, and did you have to change anything in your roadmap because of that feedback?
Honestly, I'm not saying this just as a position, but nothing's been pushed back on it in a sense
Right.
of,
Yeah.
and they much around. As I mentioned, I had it to my career in financial services. I know what we can do, what the requirements of a regulated firm are. So I was never setting out to build something that I knew was going to be on the fence, can we, can't we? It was going to be around very much, I know what consumer duty is. I know how we can support needs-based selling. I know around sort of all of those factors need to be part of what our initial sort of framework was going to be. So no, they haven't pushed back on that specifically. Now, that said, we aren't formally through the process, so I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
We have to put the time resourcing, have the result, sort of that's sort of work around guidance and documents as well as people to back up any chance of securing that approval. So that is the future, and that's what we're looking at, raising money to be able to support and build around, so that we work in sort of that hand in glove in a positive way with the regulator and all forms of government around AI. It's interesting you mentioned around sort of the fear of AI often, and there is a lot of misunderstanding, I feel, around in the industry, which isn't helped by certain labs putting out information which I would challenge, in a sense of how autonomous, how living the systems are. Today we remain a technology software services based business. The software is incredibly complicated, is incredibly rich, and it works around prompts that you would give to it. It doesn't have its own ability to go, I'm going to do something else that has been part of the parameters. So one of the things which is quite topical at the moment is looking at hacking into different systems. It's because somebody asked it to try its hardest to hack into a different system. And then we're like, oh, surprise, when it's actually succeeds in doing so. So it's good. So guardrails are a really important area for the future. And the reality is that, unfortunately, today isn't where Beyla can exactly influence. We're not OpenAI, we're not Anthropic, we're not Google, DeepMind. And that's an area where those labs need to take responsibility and come out and say, look, we are doing things in a positive way. We are open with what we're building, what is available. And we're not saying AI is taking everybody's jobs. You should be fearful of it, and make most general people in sort of society see it as a conflict to humanity.
Okay, I mean, these are huge topics, aren't they?
We could spend all day on this, in a sense, and have the pros and cons of how the labs work. Part of the challenge is the monetization of it, and as a small UK business trying to build something new, getting capital is really tough in the UK. So that is a big area around how the government can, and how the broader ecosystem of financial services. We've remained one of the world's centers of finance for the longest time. If the right backing isn't put in place, other markets will take that position away from us.
I mean, I completely agree. I think everyone would, more or less. But it does seem, at least from what we've seen lately, that the FCA is being very progressive on this. It appears to be the right approach. So let's see, and good luck with getting through that. I think it's also worth now looking at the convergence of different things, because you talked about open data, open finance a lot, and that's important here. I mean, if we're having AI systems that are only as good as the data that we've got, and all of a sudden this open banking, rules and systems that we have now suddenly become hyper relevant. There's one angle of that I think could be maybe unfortunate for a small and medium-sized enterprise, which is that if your data actually shows that you're in a weaker position than you'd previously realized, that might make it harder for them to get investment, to get loans, get all that kind of stuff. Do you think the asymmetry of information currently favors businesses in some ways? Is that something we have to be careful about, or is it just one of those things?
I think it's something we have to be cognizant about. And I think it's something that we need to take into the framework. I think one of the key things around open finance is it needs to be consent-based, and it needs to be living. And what I mean by that, one of the challenges, if you're a small business, I go to a bank and I say, I want some sort of facility. They say, okay, give me your last 3 years of audited accounts. The last 3 years of audited accounts don't necessarily tell you, the lender, what the next 3 years will be. Those audited accounts are already probably at least 6 to 12 months old. So you're actually looking 4 years back. And you look at data which is not really has gone through a process. It's not actually real cash flow data. It's where I believe, which is far more valuable, if I'm assessing a business, I'm doing due diligence around a business, is around what's happening now, who are the management team, what are the aspirations around where they're going, what's the customer base looking like. All those factors, if you were investing in a business, And that's the way perhaps we should look at lending. This is an investment into the company to help them to grow, not look at what happened over the last sort of 4 years, because that, as we've seen, isn't always a perfect indicator of future success.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. And another different tangent that kind of popped to my mind as you were talking earlier, which is obviously if we're going to be supplementing the C-suite or possibly filling roles that aren't currently filled, I mean, I'd love to know from the kind of viewpoint of a builder, which of the C-suite roles was the easiest to build efficiencies to? Where were the quickest wins?
Yeah, so I think so. I mean, my background is finance. We started out in finance, and that's where um, I think consistently around how does the movement of money is fundamental to every business. So for me, the quickest wins are around making sure that accounting, bookkeeping, forecasting, cash flow processes as automated and as efficient as possible, and that's where we think the big wins directly hit day one. Where I think also, and you mentioned this sort of as we were speaking around sort of time management and administration, it's around what's happening in my day, tomorrow. So building into Beyla, and this is coming in a release in a couple of weeks now. So by the end of August is around actually having like a daily calendar. So it's sort of before you go to bed or as you wake up in the morning, depending on your preferences, this is what's happening in your day, Ian. Mm-hmm. These are the meetings you have. These are like 3 important things you need to look at so that you can see that. And part of the memory platform on there is around sort of trying to, as you wish to tweak that, it self-learns for you. So that allows you to then think about, okay, it's becoming a bit like a personal assistant to me, and I've got that capability. We're connecting into things such as Outlook, Gmail. So I don't want it to be necessarily writing your emails for you. I want it to be looking at pulling out information from that and saying this is opportunity here. These actually things aren't necessarily, it's a bit of spam. You don't have to spend time on that. That to me, as somebody who receives about 200 emails a day on LinkedIn and messages and everything else, is a huge time suck. And actually, when I'm trying to figure out, things get lost because just too much comes in. So by having that ability to sort of focus, it gives me the time to spend on the important things. What we then move into is around, okay, well, where can I actually add some value around guidance? So, for example, if I receive a contract, is that contract fair and applicable to us? And it's not giving you formal legal advice, but it can pull out some of the red flags you may want to look at. Is it under UK law, for example, the laws of England and Wales? Is it a US contract because you're working with a US supplier? Is the opportunity to go back and renegotiate some of these terms? And that gives the information back to the business owner to say, actually, maybe there's 5 things here. They're big, we're small, we're going to look at one of them. And that to me is a win. And that's where we want to build into around how it's not going to run your business for you fully autonomously, not yet anyway. Maybe in 10 years' time, it's a different story. But it's around how can we do those small wins that show incremental growth and you trust the platform is working your interest.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And one conversation that always comes up when we talk about AI-led businesses is the defensible moats. And I think it would be interesting to know from your perspective what you think it is that makes Beyla a standout solution and what it has that other things don't. I mean, and I say this in the context of other tools that SMEs will already be using are all building their own AI capabilities, right? I mean, if you look at it from an accounting background, you can have like Xero or Intuit or Sage or whoever is, they will build more capabilities into what they already have. So what is it that keeps Beyla relevant and makes it different from the crowd?
Yeah, so we wanted to build from day one a platform which was standalone for you, the business. Certainly, all of those platforms you mentioned, Sage are looking at that, Xero looking at that, HubSpot's looking at that. They all have their own platforms. That now really means that me as a business, I have to go and speak to 10 different AI platforms from 10 different businesses or more, depending on what my circumstances are, figure out how they work. Typically, they're chatbots, so that I have to type a prompt into it. Maybe I can speak to it and say, hey, tell me about what's happening in Xero today. And it will tell me about what happens in Xero today. It won't tell me about what's happening outside of that system without me having to rebuild all those capabilities around it.
Yeah. I feel like this could be the latest fintech bundling and unbundling cycle that maybe we're heading into. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah, and look,
I think I was bored of talking about that the last time, but we can do it all over again.
yeah,
Anyway,
exactly. And look, I see it as an ecosystem. I don't want to have. I didn't set out to be replace Zero. I didn't set out to replace
yeah,
HubSpot. I didn't set out to replace email. It's around. We want to be that ecosystem of connected opportunity, which surfaces insights, is trusted in terms of it looks at those insights and it has it uses them in a way for good to help
yeah,
the business grow, and that is really important. People say, "Oh, without I can build systems. I don't need to pay for systems anymore. SaaS is dead."
hmm
I would disagree, because the reality of building your own system, if you're a IT firm with 20 developers, maybe you can. If you're a small business trying to build in a non-IT area, vibe coding platforms that are sustainable and reliable is good luck.
yeah.
Is all I can say.
No, I hear you on that. And I've got one last kind of regulatory type question before I
Sure.
kind of head towards the end of this, which is obviously you've built in the safeguard that the digital human makes a suggestion that you can then action. Where does that put you in terms of liability? Because let's say a credible suggestion is made, which is then followed, and then that goes on to lose a business a lot of money. Do you hold any liability for that? Is that something you need to be concerned about?
So and I think it's yet to be seen in reality, because how would that work today if I was, let's say I was an advisory firm, maybe I'm PricewaterhouseCoopers or KPMG or Deloitte, and we have the same conversations. I'm pretty sure their terms and conditions would actually not make them fully liable for that. You're providing guidance and support around a project. We take it seriously. I'm not going to say, "Oh, tough luck, you made the
Yeah.
decision, ha ha," because that's not going to support our business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be needlessly lacking in empathy. But yeah, okay, I hear
Yeah,
you.
no, exactly. So look, we've got to take it seriously. Yeah,
Yeah,
our
yeah,
agents need to have
yeah,
factual information. They need to, and you live and die by their reputation.
yeah,
Bankers love to say, "Oh, people trust us." I don't trust my bank. They're a profit-making organisation that's paying the shareholders as much money as they can, and that's their business. Yeah,
yeah,
they need to be very clear about that. That's what the business works. It's not a charitable organisation. I like working with banks, and I understand the business, but trust is an often overused word.
yeah,
Um, I want to have the positioning where the information we surface is trusted information because we put the right tools, platforms, procedures, checks into that. I can't take the responsibility away from a person that uses that information and makes the decision that I'm not part of.
hmm yeah.
And
Well,
that's the way and I think it will evolve. And I think as we
mhm,
move forward, there will be people looking at different, whether you call it regulations or guidelines around what that really means. I think we're yet to get there yet in a way of what that really will look like.
mm,
And I think it does come down to the labs as well. If we're utilizing information from, so one is, okay, this is factual information that is in Zero, for example. These are your positions. That is a statement of fact. If we're then putting, what do you call it? Best practice around that. That is a procedural understanding of how businesses work. If we look at sort of other things around, and this is where maybe the intelligence comes on and says, okay, you can do something no one's ever done before. That is a future opportunity, and there's all going to be a parameter of different things that I'm sure will come up around this.
yeah,
But our primary guidance is around we're surfacing information to you. We want to consult with you, and if you're not sure about any questions, don't make a decision. Ask Beyla to repeat it in a way until you are comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable, don't make the decision.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a useful perspective to bring to the table, and it's interesting as well. I think people expect a fully formed regulatory system around this, and one that's very hard to do. And also, these things are iterative, right? I feel like we'll still be seeing changes and evolutions to the rules that underpin these kind of agents for years and decades to come.
Exactly. Let's look today and over the last decade, how many billions of pounds or dollars have banks paid in fines because humans made errors that affected other humans?
Yeah.
That's a we can't hold. We can't. If we say humans are 100% infallible and AI has to be the same, maybe you have that argument.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, humans are infallible. We make wrong choices. Humans have human errors, and that's what happens. I think actually having a technology which is able to get in front of some of these things, and just by nature of it's different,
Yeah.
do a different approach, gives us a real advantage to try and minimize some of that. Not take away the humanity from us. We are still the people driving the businesses. We are still the ones driving the technology, but this is helping us.
Yeah. Do you know, Daniel, I know this is a good conversation because I keep thinking of things I want to ask you, and I keep saying the last question
I
is
know we're
coming up.
running in, so apologies on your audience will be dropping off.
No, it's good. I guess one question before I actually do wrap it up, and I will wrap it up after this one. Well, I have two questions. The first one, though, is pricing. How do you price for an AI-based proposition? Because obviously you could look at token usage, you could look at some kind of tiered pricing model. How do you actually build that in? Because I mean, I aim this podcast for people that are growing businesses and trying to scale businesses. Pricing is such a fundamental thing. People don't love to talk about it, but I think with AI, it's such a different model. Like you don't know what the input from your side is going to be until you've actually worked with a client, right? So how do you navigate pricing?
Yeah, and it will iterate over time, certainly. And we are dependent currently on some of the partners we work with. So our platform is a model agnostic. We have a cost of running into getting information from models that we need to cover that cost of. So the way we think that the best way to start out at is a credit-based system. So depending on what you believe your usage is, then you would have a plan. Plan A, let's say, would come with X credits. Plan B would come with more. Plan C would come with more of again. And it's around having that ability to show you what you're using. So for us, we're not saying, oh, this is a fixed fee, you pay it up front and you're locked in. Beyla, if you don't like Beyla, don't use it, and you won't be charged for it. And you can cancel at any time. Your data is not stored by us and kept outside of the things we would need to do from a regulatory oversight if we were regulated. So for us, it's around, we're not trying to harvest that information. What we're trying to do is provide those tools which allow you to get inputs. And for us, it's around, we would charge at this level around that. So you have a plan and you'd utilize that credit. So we would show you how many you're using. So if you're on the wrong plan and you actually say end of the month comes and actually I used half of my credits, actually, let's put you on the lower plan, and it more aligns with your business. We're not impacting your cash flow. We're not stopping you growing. We're trying to support that. If you come halfway through the month and you've actually used all your credits up, maybe you need the next plan. And actually, it's a good thing, because what we're hopefully showing is the cost and value of Beyla to you is actually far cheaper than you going out replacing our value with third-party systems, technologies that you're having to run yourself.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who wants to try out Beyla, how can they do so? Is it available to businesses now?
So we're currently working through with some pre-selected customers. We do have an open wait list. So the way that we're looking to roll Beyla out is to work to align to have customers come on board and make sure that we've got full comfort around sort of the service we offer. So best way is look at the website. So beyla.ai, www.beyla.ai. Sign up to the wait list. We're happy to contact you. And as part of that, we sort of gives the opportunity to sort of say what you're interested in. That also allows us to say, actually, we've got those capabilities live now. Come on, try it out and get into the beta. And as we come out of that beta, we'll look to formally launch the platform and grow the future of finance from here.
Amazing. Daniel, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing about what you're doing at Beyla and how the proposition is evolving and how you're getting it off the ground. It's a really, really fascinating thing that you're doing, and I'm really intrigued to see how it goes. So again, thanks for joining me, Daniel. It's been a pleasure having you here.
My pleasure, Ian. Thank you very much. And we look forward to maybe in the future, Beyla can come on herself and join me in the conversation.
Interview bots. Is this my future? Is this what my job looks like? Or do I just make my own bot and then get that to interview your bot?
We can build you one, don't worry.
We just have a generally terrible experience for the audience. Or maybe good, who knows? But then the audience will probably be bots as well, so who knows? Anyway, that's no different to social media today, is it? Anyway, to all the not bots that have been listening to this podcast, thank you for joining us. Daniel was a great conversation, I think. I had a great time talking with him. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll be back again soon. This has been the latest episode of LFG. Goodbye for now.
Raising funds, speaking the club, drinking coffee, and fighting fraud. LFG, turn it up and come with me. Big move, natural synergy, say it loud. LFG, hold up and listening. Press play, chase the mystery, ride that way from Web 2 to